Okay. Yeah, that's hot. So this is part 2 to engine and transmission mock-up, and I'm going to be making the transmission mount in this video. So if you haven't already, you should like and subscribe to this channel. And if this is the first time you're watching this, you should go back to my playlist in my channel, and you'll see 2012 Dodge Challenger LS swap. So stick around, you're not going to want to miss out on how I fabricate that transmission mount. So right here, we're moving the engine around. We're playing with like an inch here, an inch there. That's why you don't see a whole lot of movement. So yes, it is somewhat of a tight fit. It's critical on which place it because it can interfere with anything else. But placement is key here. I was starting to look at it, and these mounts, these original mounts, are a little too high, and then and that they're going to be getting in the way. So I'm going to get the plasma cutter out. I'm going to cut it around and get this even with the lower part of the frame right here, especially on the other side. The other side is hitting the AC compressor, and I'm wanting AC in the car, so I don't want to not have it. So I got the mount cut off and then ground off. Did the same on the driver's side. Here. I cut that circular plate off. That's what it was. So 30.5 is the center line from this part of the fender, this part of the fender, where the hood kind of sits in it with the measuring tape. I went right here on top of this core support. I have, this is 30.5 right here. This is the center point, but because for some reason the engine and the transmission want to be center lined like a ½ inch off from being center, that's really all I have to work with because it's super tight back down there with the transmission to fit in the tunnel. So I have my level here and I have a square, and then I use this part of the car to see if it's square, because this thing over here I made a square. It comes off to being 30 inches from the passenger side of the vehicle. And then I also have my degree finder. Put this here. It's not the greatest thing in the world, this degree finder, but it's right on 0. But I'm going off of this also, so I got a reference point with the core support here, which is pretty level. And I measured this degree too. It says it's about 5. Sometimes I gotta hit it. You see, it gives or take 1 degree. It's around 4 to 3.5. Looks like it's 3.5. And I'm compensating because it's not like that's on a foot back there, but it's right on the pinch weld. Also, the only thing is though, it's got a piece of wood up here. So I'm gonna compensate for it, and hopefully that'll be like around 3 degrees. That's not super bad. I'll work with that. So I thought I wasn't gonna use this old oil pan that came off of this car. Getting a measurement from the back here, it's 5 inches tall there. Actually really good of a height. It's not that tall. 5 inch, because everything I was trying to get on here, I've got that AC compressor attached to it. I've got the power steering pump lines. They're not touching. The only thing I might be worried about that it might touch is the oil pan, because it's not on there. From the bottom of this transmission to the subframe right here, it's about 5.5. About 5.5 or so, maybe a little bit less. But still, I've got about 3/8 to ½ inch of play. From the measurements here, it's looking like I'm gonna be able to use the old oil pan, and that's a good thing, because I didn't want to have to go and cut up and have to weld up this other oil pan, thinking that I was gonna have to do a front sump right here. Thought I was gonna have to make a front sump because this is where the oil pan would usually go. This is a win-win for me. It's almost like this engine was made to fit in here. Okay, so now back to this transmission. I have the exhaust here. I got the dual exhaust put on. So I jacked up the exhaust because I didn't want them hanging too low below the vehicle. I've seen some people, even some muffler shops, they'll weld it on. They're so dang low. There's like 3-4 inches lower than what they're supposed to. So I got my jack. I got me a piece of wood right here, and I made it level with the bottom of the car here. I know it can go a little lower, but just eyeballing the rest of the exhaust, it looks like it's pretty much parallel with the bottom of the car here. So with the transmission, I had to make some reference points with this too. So with the old transmission, I have it right here. I wanted to see how far it is from the center line of this to where it is on the bottom of that car, kind of basically where that piece of wood was. From the center line, the output shaft here, I'm eyeballing it straight at it, trying to do as best I can to eyeball it here. And it comes down to about 7 1/4, and the measurement on the output shaft at the 4L80. Anyways, I got from the center line of the transmission, and I measured down, and then I got my level again, and I went right across, basically right here with it. I put the level across the bar where the old transmission mount was, and then I measured straight up, and I had to do it again where I kind of had to eyeball it. And so it came out to being about 6 inches, and I jacked this up because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't gonna go and interfere with that. So it's about 1 1/4 inches off, and I could do with 1 inch there. And I have room on this side and room on this side. This thing I have play right here and push away if I have to. It looks like it could be around 9 to 10 inches from where it was originally sitting for the old output shaft on the old transmission that was in this car. Possibly could work better for me anyways, because that means less of a drive shaft and a little bit less weight to be flinging around here. I'm not going with an aluminum one here like this. It's just it actually helped out a lot better for me to see clearances on both sides because it's so much wider. But you can see how much more room above these exhaust pipes that I have enough room. I could go a little bit lower with this transmission, but it should be fine. I have a little bit of room back on this side of the trans. This one might be a little bit different. I might have to take some of this. Hopefully they have a plug where I can go in at a 90 and it comes out the side of it like this. But I think that might be the worst of it all. Here, power steering lines I was talking about. That just have enough room. And the engine does sit up a little high, but it's not super high. I was trying to measure it, see if it would just go right below the hood. Because I don't want to have to get a hood, or I don't want to have to get a hood scoop put on here. And I believe that was like 6 1/2 inches for the fast intake I have from right here. I should have enough room from right here where you guys see it. If I have to notch a little bit below the hood, then I have to, but I believe it's gonna fit without having to do all that. It's a low one, it's not no truck intake. So I have the exhaust manifold put back on this side, and then I'm gonna be working with this side. And I don't have to do the power steering pump because it's got an electric power steering pump on here. I know I'm gonna have to have the alternator. That's the only other thing that might get in the way of this. So I have to go and bolt that one up too. Regardless, this is where it's gonna go. I'm gonna go and start making some mounts. I'm gonna start with the transmission mount, so that way I know where it's going to be. The only thing is it's gonna be harder because it's gonna be me getting on the ground constantly up and down. It should be fine. So here's the old transmission mount, and I'm gonna use this thing as a guide to build this transmission mount, because it's basically already got the holes lined up where I need them to be, and it's a solid piece here. And so what I'll do is I'll just get I've got a piece of steel over there that I gotta cut up, and I'll just mount it right here, and then these are the bolts that go in here. And you can see there's plenty of play. I found some old motor mounts back to here that have this, and this has plenty of play too. And so what I'm gonna do with this is cut off the welds here on this, and then cut it in half or in thirds or however many I'm gonna make. And these are gonna be the holes basically right here. It's not gonna be as tall as this. I'm just using this as like an inner brace to put inside of here, and I'll cut that. So this I'm gonna put inside here. Basically I'll cut a hole out right here where this bolt is gonna drop through, and then it'll act as a inner brace, so that way it's not crushing the bar. So this will help out with bracing and structure. I know some people would have just drilled a hole and then put this right through and then call it real, but I can't do that because I needed to have strength. So I'm gonna cut this out and put it in here. I know these might be a bit overkill. I put this in there I welded it up. I even put a little hole there so I could weld it in a little bit more, have a little extra strength. But it didn't come out too bad. I just got done both of them. That took a little bit of time. I know it's overkill, but at least I'll be able to have a little bit of adjustment up to about an inch. Actually, it's pretty good. This whole bar isn't gonna be on there. Probably gonna get like cut here maybe, and then it's gonna bend up. I even made it where it has a little bit of a angle there. This is gonna be towards the front of the car. I wouldn't want it to hang up on anything, so I put a bend there, so just in case I run over something. And I'll fill that in with a little piece there, a little filler piece, so no water gets in it. Alright, so here's part of the transmission mount. These two bars here, or this bar and this bar, and they're not connected just yet because I've been building that all day right there and getting into matchup. Now I'm at the point where I'm gonna put a plate here with that has a bend in it, and then I'm gonna make it come over here. So this is flat right here, and this one's on the top right here is flat also. And then I'll put it right here basically, and then it'll stretch out a little bit. I got my template here cut out for that little section to bring those two pieces of the transmission mount together. Alright, there's the final piece to the transmission mount. Just got it all cleaned up and cut out and added this little tab here for reinforcement, but honestly it's so dang thick. This piece of metal, I don't think it's even gonna bend. Alright, here's the finished product. Still hot for me welding on. I welded these caps here on the ends, so no water would get in there. It's still gonna get in there, but not as easily. Okay, yeah, that's hot. Then I got this side. I angled it here. That way it has a little bit more rigidity. I rounded it in areas. I rounded it there so I wouldn't be fighting, trying to get around, putting bolts around it or putting my arm somewhere up in there, and I didn't want to have it super tight and so bulky in there. I made it as versatile as I can, so that way I can get in there, especially trying to make it where I can make the exhaust wrap around it. It's one of these sides. The transmission mount is in, and it is being held in there by its own weight. I don't have the jack on it. I might end up putting maybe a skid plate below this with some air vents on it. That way all the heat isn't being held there. And then I might not, depending on if it is too low to the ground. I don't think it is, because I think it's actually higher than what the other one was. So if you haven't already, you should like and subscribe to this channel. And stick around for part 3. And I'll see you guys next week.